The danger of accelerating beyond collective consciousness. Nikola Tesla. The room was silent when he realized he had made an irreversible mistake. Nikola Tesla looked up from the equipment he had just turned off and felt the weight of emptiness around him. It wasn't a physical void. The workshop was still full of coils, wires, and pulsating machines. It was something worse, a human void. He had just demonstrated, in front of 3 investors and 2 renowned scientists, a technology capable of transmitting electrical energy through the air, without wires, across kilometers of distance. The lamp at the other end of the room had lit on its own, powered by invisible waves that cut through the space like silent rays. It should have been the moment of glory, but no one applauded. One of the investors, a burly man with a gray mustache, crossed his arms and frowned. Another, younger one, looked around as if looking for a way out. The older scientist, who was supposed to be his ally, looked down and shook his head slowly, as if witnessing something too dangerous to exist. Tesla felt his stomach go cold. He did not expect distrust. I expected enthusiasm. I expected recognition. But all he found was fear disguised as skepticism. "That's impossible," muttered the scientist, his voice thick with disbelief. "There's no way energy can travel through the air like that. There must be a trick." Tesla took a deep breath. There was no trick. There was only what he had always known. The universe operates by frequencies. Everything vibrates. Everything resonates. And he had discovered how to tune matter to the invisible waves that connect all things. But trying to explain this now would be futile. They weren't ready to listen. And it was at that moment that Tesla realized something devastating. He had accelerated too much. He was vibrating at a frequency that the world could not yet reach. In the following days, the doors began to close. Canceled contracts, meetings canceled. People who had previously treated him with respect now avoided him in the hallways. Tesla realized that it wasn't just his technology that was scary. It was him. The intensity in the look, absolute certainty. The way he talked about the future, as if he had already seen it. He didn't look human. He looked like someone who had walked through an invisible door and come back knowing too much. And that, he would soon learn, is dangerous. Because when you see beyond what others see, when you feel what others don't yet feel, when you vibrate at a higher frequency than the world around you, you become a threat. Not because he wants to, but because your simple presence exposes the limitations of others. And no one likes to feel late. Tesla began to be called crazy. Not publicly, not yet, but behind the scenes in whispered conversations, between fake smiles and empty promises. He heard the tone of contempt in the voices. I felt the judgment in the silences. And little by little, he was pushed to the margins of the scientific society that he himself had helped to build. But the worst part wasn't the rejection. The worst part was the loneliness that came afterwards, because Tesla noticed things that others didn't. I saw patterns where there was only chaos. I felt energetic currents passing through the air, and every time I tried to share that vision, I was met with blank stares or nervous laughter, as if he was speaking a language that no one else could understand. He started avoiding crowds. He began to prefer the silence of his workshop to the company of people who didn't understand him. And it was in this forced isolation that Tesla made an even more disturbing discovery. Accelerating beyond the collective consciousness doesn't just isolate you, turns you into a target, because the world does not forgive those who advance too quickly. He punishes. He sabotages. It goes out. And Tesla was about to find out how far this punishment could go. One gray winter afternoon, he received a letter with no return address. The envelope was thick, expensive, sealed with red wax. Inside, a single handwritten sentence: "We know what you're building. Stop now, while you still can." Tesla read the message 3 times. Then he tore the paper into pieces and threw it into the fireplace. He wasn't going to stop. I couldn't, because what he was developing wasn't just an invention. It was the key to freeing humanity from energy shortages. It was the door to a future where electricity would flow freely, like air, accessible to everyone. But someone didn't want that door to open. Someone would rather keep humanity in chains. And Tesla, even though he still didn't know who this invisible enemy was, felt for the first time the bitter taste of fear. Not afraid of death, but afraid that his vision would die before he did. Fear that the world would never wake up to the truth he held in his hands. If you feel like this story is touching something inside you, subscribe to the channel, because what comes next will change the way you see the price of seeing too far. 3 weeks after the anonymous letter, Tesla woke up to the sound of shattering glass. He jumped out of bed and ran to the bedroom window. Far below, in the dark street, 2 silhouettes were quickly moving away, disappearing in the early morning mist. When he went down the stairs and reached his workshop, his heart almost stopped. The door was broken, papers scattered across the floor, overturned drawers, and the main coil, the one that had taken months to calibrate with millimeter precision, was destroyed. Someone had hammered the copper core until it was completely deformed. Tesla knelt down in the middle of the chaos and closed his eyes. It wasn't theft. Thieves would take something. That was sabotage, pure and deliberate. And the scariest thing, whoever did this knew exactly what to destroy. I knew which part was irreplaceable. I knew where to attack to do maximum damage without looking like a direct attack. He ran his fingers over the shards of twisted metal and felt anger rise in his throat. But it wasn't ordinary anger. It was something deeper. It was the pain of realizing that his vision wasn't just being ignored. It was being fought. The next morning, Tesla went to the police. The deputy, a middle-aged man with tired eyes, listened to the report with a bored expression. He wrote down some details in an old notebook and promised to investigate. But Tesla saw the truth in his eyes. No one was going to do anything. Later, he discovered why. Someone had already been to the police station before him. Someone with enough money to turn a break-in into a minor incident with no identifiable suspects. Tesla began to understand who he was fighting against. It was not a scientific rival. He was not a resentful investor. It was something bigger, something invisible, something that operated through influence, money, and strategic silence. It was the system, the very fabric of the established order. And he, unintentionally, had touched a sensitive nerve in this structure. Because the technology that Tesla developed was not just revolutionary, it was dangerous for those who profited from the old model. Wireless power meant free power. Free energy meant the end of monopolies, end of control, end of power concentrated in the hands of a few. And that, Tesla now knew, was unacceptable to those running the game. He spent weeks rebuilding the destroyed equipment. He worked alone, locked in the workshop, sleeping a few hours a night. I didn't trust anyone anymore. Every noise on the street made him look up. Every shadow on the window put him on alert. He was becoming paranoid, and he knew it. But paranoia, in that context, was just disguised lucidity. One night, while adjusting the wires of a new coil, Tesla had a devastating realization. He remembered something his mentor had told him years ago, when he was still a student. The world does not reject new ideas because they are wrong. It rejects them because they are too true. Truth scares. Truth compels change. And most people prefer the comfort of known illusion to the discomfort of unknown truth. At the time, Tesla thought that was exaggerated. Now he understood every word. He wasn't being attacked because he was wrong. I was being attacked because I was right, and his certainty exposed the fragility of an entire system built on artificial scarcity. He was an uncomfortable mirror, and mirrors, when they show too much, are the first to be broken. But Tesla had something his enemies didn't expect: unshakable stubbornness. He wasn't going to give up. I wasn't going to back down. Even though he knew that each step forward isolated him even more, even though he felt the noose closing around him, he continued, because giving up would mean betraying yourself. And that, for Tesla, was worse than any sabotage. It was during this period of solitary reconstruction that he began to notice something strange. Small signs, letters arriving with the postage stamp torn, as if they had been opened before, telephone conversations with unusual noises on the line, and, even more disturbing, the constant feeling of being watched. He couldn't prove it, but I felt it. It was as if invisible eyes followed him everywhere. One afternoon, while going out to buy materials, Tesla quickly turned a corner and caught a man in a dark suit looking away. The guy pretended to be looking at a shop window, but Tesla noticed the fake movement. The next day, he saw the same man across the street, and the other, and the other. He was being watched. At first, Tesla felt afraid. Then he felt something different. He felt power, because if someone was spending time and money to watch him, it meant he was dangerous. It meant their technology was real enough to threaten powerful interests. It meant he was on the right path. And that's when Tesla made a decision. He wasn't just going to continue. He was going to speed up. I was going to finish the project before they could stop it. I was going to prove to the world that free energy and possible. And he was going to do it alone, without help, without approval, without waiting for the collective conscience to catch up. He knew the price. He knew it would isolate him even more. I knew I would be called crazy, dangerous, irresponsible. But I also knew that some truths need to be shouted, even when no one wants to hear it, even when the scream costs everything. Tesla locked himself in the workshop for weeks. He stopped accepting visitors. He stopped answering letters. He stopped trying to convince the world. He was going to build the proof, and the proof would speak for itself. But what he didn't know yet was that, while he worked in silence, his enemies also worked, and their plan wasn't just to sabotage him. It was to destroy him completely, erase your name, erase your technology, erase any trace that he was ever right. And the final attack was closer than Tesla imagined. Tesla realized something was wrong when the silence became too heavy. It wasn't the silence of solitude, the one he already knew well. It was a strategic silence, calculated. In recent days, surveillance had ceased. The man in the dark suit had disappeared. The letters arrived again intact. The noise on the phone line disappeared. At first glance, it looked like relief, but Tesla knew enough about strategy to know that the enemy's silence is rarely surrender. It's usually preparation. He was right. One cold March morning, Tesla opened the newspaper and felt the ground disappear beneath his feet. The headline on the front page read, "Visionary Scientist or Dangerous Charlatan? Experts question Nikola Tesla's sanity." The article was long, detailed, and devastating. It cited reliable sources who claimed that Tesla suffered from delusions of grandeur. It mentioned failed experiments that would have put lives at risk. He insinuated that his technology was scientifically impossible and that he was scamming innocent investors. Every line was a stab, not because it was true, but because he was smart. The article did not attack him directly. It just raised doubts. He only whispered suspicions. And whispers, Tesla knew, were more effective than accusations. Because accusations can be refuted, whispers spread alone, grow in the shadows, feed on other people's curiosity. In the following weeks, other articles appeared. Scientific magazines published letters from readers questioning his competence. Smaller newspapers reproduced the accusations with slight variations. And, little by little, the narrative solidified. Tesla was brilliant, yes, but unstable. Visionary, perhaps, but dangerous. Better to keep him at a distance. Tesla saw his circle of allies shrink until it almost disappeared. People who once defended him now avoided mentioning him. Scientists who admired his work began to publicly distance themselves, and the few who still believed in him did so in secret, afraid of being associated with an increasingly tarnished name. But Tesla didn't fall apart. On the contrary, he understood something fundamental at that moment. The smear campaign was not a sign of weakness on the part of his enemies. It was a sign of desperation. They failed to destroy their technology, so they tried to destroy his reputation. And that meant he was closer to victory than he imagined. It was then that Tesla began to act differently. He stopped trying to convince the world. He stopped seeking approval. He stopped explaining. Instead, he delved deep into the work itself, reorganized your projects, remade calculations. He tested frequencies that he had previously considered too risky, and in absolute silence, he began to prepare something that no one expected. He decided he wasn't just going to prove that his technology worked. He was going to prove it in a way so undeniable, so spectacular, that no defamation campaign could erase it. It was going to create an event that would shake the collective consciousness and force the world to wake up, whether it wanted to or not. For months, Tesla worked in total secrecy. He locked himself in the workshop. He covered the windows with thick cloths, installed reinforced locks on the doors. I didn't trust anyone anymore, not even in himself sometimes when exhaustion made him doubt his own sanity. But whenever doubt arose, he looked at the equipment he had built, at the calculations that worked, at the laws of the universe that he had managed to decipher, and the doubt dissolved. He knew something his enemies didn't. I knew that the truth does not need defenders. The truth defends itself. You just need an opportunity to speak out. And Tesla was creating that opportunity. Tesla started spreading false information. He let it slip in casual conversations with distant acquaintances that he was giving up, that the pressure had been too much, that maybe the critics were right. This information, he knew, would reach the ears of the security guards, and they would arrive. Within days, the vigilance relaxed even further. Attacks in newspapers decreased. Your eye enemies apparently believed they had won, but as they relaxed, Tesla advanced. He completed the construction of a wireless energy transmitter so powerful that it would be capable of turning on lamps from kilometers away. More than that, he would be able to do it in front of witnesses, irrefutably, without the possibility of tricks or illusions. It would be definitive proof, the moment when the collective consciousness would be forced to see what Tesla had always seen. But there was a problem. To perform this demonstration, he needed an immense amount of energy, more than any conventional generator could provide. And that's when Tesla had a risky idea, dangerous even, but possible. He was going to use the city's own electrical grid as a source. It would drain energy directly from the transmission lines, amplify it through its coils, and redirect it all into a single burst of tuned frequency. It would be glorious. It would be unforgettable. It would be the perfect revenge against everyone who doubted him. Tesla finished preparations, set the date for the demonstration, and he sent anonymous invitations to journalists, scientists, and even some of his fiercest critics. He didn't sign the invitations. He just wrote, "Come witness the impossible. Come see the future." And as he waited for the day to arrive, he felt something he hadn't felt in a long time. It wasn't fear. It wasn't hope. It was certainty. certainty that, soon, everything would change. But what Tesla did not yet know was that his enemies had also made preparations, and that the final confrontation would be much more devastating than he could have imagined. The night of the demonstration arrived with a sky full of dark clouds. Tesla had been in the workshop since dawn, checking every connection, every wire, every coil. His hands shook slightly, not with fear, but with anticipation. He had waited so long for this moment, sacrificed so much, lost so much, and now, finally, everything would be revealed. The world would see, the world would understand, the world was going to wake up. Around 7 in the evening, the first guests began to arrive. Tesla watched them through the window. He recognized some faces, journalists from important outlets, respected scientists, even a member of the Science Academy. But he also noticed something strange. There were men he didn't know, men who didn't look like journalists or scientists. Men in dark suits stood discreetly in the shadows, observing everything with excessive attention. Tesla felt a tightness in his chest, but it was too late to retreat. He opened the workshop doors and invited everyone to enter. The group entered in silence, looking around with a mixture of curiosity and skepticism. Some whispered among themselves, others maintained neutral, almost bored expressions, as if they were already expecting disappointment. Tesla positioned himself in the center of the room, next to the main transmitter. The machine was imposing, a tower of copper and iron, wrapped in spirals of metallic wire, with blue sparks dancing on its surface. He took a deep breath and began to speak. "You have been summoned here today to witness something that will change the history of humanity. Wireless energy, free energy, energy that flows through the air like sunlight, accessible to everyone, anywhere." There was muffled laughter. Someone in the background muttered, "Here we go again." Tesla ignored it. It continued, "I know many of you think this is impossible. I know I've been called crazy, a charlatan, dangerous, but the truth doesn't care about opinions. The truth just is, and today, you're going to see it with your own eyes." He pointed to the other side of the room, where there was a row of light bulbs disconnected from any visible source of power. Then he turned to the transmitter and placed his hand on the main lever. "Get ready." Tesla pulled the lever. There was a low, growing hum that made the floor vibrate. The coils began to glow with increasing intensity. Blue sparks jumped between the wires, forming luminous arcs that seemed alive. The air became thick, charged, like seconds before lightning strikes. And then, one by one, the lamps on the other side of the room began to light up. First weakly, then with full shine. All of them. No wires, no connections, powered by invisible waves that crossed space. The room was completely silent. Tesla observed the faces around him. He saw astonishment. He saw disbelief. He saw fear. But he also saw something else. He saw understanding. Some of those present were beginning to understand what that meant. They began to see the future materializing before them. But before anyone could speak, something went wrong. The hum of the transmitter increased in intensity. The sparks became more violent. Tesla frowned and looked at the gauges. The energy was rising beyond what was planned, far beyond. He ran to the controls and tried to adjust, but the sticks didn't respond. Something was blocking the commands, and then Tesla saw it. One of the men in the dark suit, the one who had remained near the control panel from the beginning, discreetly walked away, but not before Tesla noticed the severed wire dangling between his fingers. Sabotage. The transmitter was out of control. The lamps began to flicker furiously. Some exploded. Electric arcs were now jumping in all directions, hitting walls, furniture, people. The public panicked. Screams. Rush. Some tried to get out, but the static energy in the air made their hair stand on end and their skin tingle. Tesla knew he had seconds before something catastrophic happened. He ran to the main transmitter and without hesitation grabbed the central coil with his bare hands. The current went through him like 1,000 needles of fire. He screamed in pain but didn't let go. He forced the coil to rotate manually, redirecting the energy, deflecting it towards the ground. There was a deafening bang. An explosion of white light filled the room, and then silence. Tesla fell to his knees. His hands burned, his body shaking. All around, the guests stood frozen in shock, some injured. Others were simply stunned, but all alive. He looked up and saw the man in the dark suit walking out the back door. He wanted to scream, he wanted to chase him, but he could barely stay conscious. And then he heard something worse. He heard one of the journalists say, "He almost killed us. Tesla almost killed us all." And there, in that instant, Tesla understood. The sabotage wasn't just to destroy the demonstration, it was to turn it into evidence against him. It was so that the world would see not a genius revealing a discovery, but a dangerous man losing control. It was to solidify the narrative that he was unstable, unpredictable, a threat, and it worked. In the following days, newspapers published devastating headlines. Tesla experiment nearly causes tragedy. Out-of-control scientist puts lives at risk. None of them mentioned that the lamps came on. None of them talked about wireless power. All that was left was fear, the chaos, the danger. Tesla was summoned to give testimony. He faced an investigative committee where he was interrogated for hours. The commission issued an opinion. Tesla should immediately cease all experiments with wireless power transmission. Any continuity would be considered a violation of public safety standards. Tesla left the courtroom shattered. Not physically. The burns on his hands would heal, but something inside him had broken. He had given everything he had. He risked everything, and still, he lost. That night, alone in the empty workshop, Tesla looked at the destroyed equipment and felt something he had never felt before. He felt like giving up. But then, in the absolute silence, he heard something, a faint, almost imperceptible sound. He turned and saw. One of the lamps, the one that had been left standing after the explosion, was still glowing dimly, powered by a residual resonance that persisted in the air. Tesla looked at that lonely light, and little by little, something was reborn inside him. It wasn't hope, it was understanding. He realized that the battle was not against people, it was against time, against the speed of collective consciousness. He had accelerated too much, but the universe doesn't forget. Frequencies don't die, they just wait. And Tesla decided that if the world wasn't ready now, he was going to make sure it was ready later. He took out his notebooks, and he started writing. Tesla wrote for 3 days without stopping. Didn't eat properly, barely slept. He just wrote, page after page, documenting every frequency, every calculation, every secret he had discovered. He knew he could no longer fight the present, but it could set up the future. I could leave a map for those who would come later. When he finished, Tesla put the notebooks away in different places, some buried, others hidden in obscure libraries. He was planting seeds in still infertile soil. But seeds, when planted with conviction, always find a way to sprout. In the following months, Tesla became a shadow of his former self, stopped looking for financing. He stopped trying to convince. People interpreted this as defeat, but Tesla was not defeated. I was at peace, because he had finally understood something fundamental. It is not that the world rejects the truth. The truth is that the truth needs to respect the rhythm of the world. If you try to force the collective consciousness to skip steps that it has not yet processed, you will not free it. You'll just isolate yourself. Tesla realized that his mistake was not that he saw too much. It was trying to make the world see at the same speed. Consciousness expands through resonance, and resonance requires tuning, not imposition. He remembered a conversation with an old professor. The man had said, "Whoever sees the future too soon lives like a ghost in the present." Tesla understood now. He had lived as a ghost. It vibrated at such a high frequency that it disconnected from the shared reality. But this sacrifice was not in vain, because every time someone accelerates beyond the collective consciousness, even if they are silenced, they leave a mark on the energy field of the world. And this vibration, over time, finds other compatible vibrations. Years later, Tesla received a letter from a young scientist. The letter said, "I found one of your notebooks. I tested your calculations. It worked. I will continue where you left off." Tesla smiled for the first time in decades. The seed had sprouted. He replied, "Don't speed alone. Find others who vibe like you." Tesla died a few years later, alone, without recognition. The newspapers barely reported his death. Nothing about free energy. Nothing about the future he tried to deliver. But decades later, engineers unearthed his designs, and the world began to understand. It began to vibrate at the frequency that Tesla had seen 100 years earlier. Wireless power, data transmission over the air, resonance-based technologies. Tesla didn't win in life, but he won in time. The lesson he left is not about being recognized. It's about having the courage to see what others don't yet see. It's about vibrating high, even though you know the world will try to lower your frequency. Because the danger of accelerating beyond collective consciousness is not that you will fail, it's just that you will feel alone. And many give up. Many lower their frequency just to belong. But those who resist change the world, not immediately, but irreversibly. If this story touched something inside you, subscribe to the channel. The universe does not respond to your words, it responds to your vibration. Tesla knew this, and now, you know it too.